Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. Welcome back to our series covering the Syria and Lebanon campaign of 1941. This relatively obscure operation involved the invasion of these two countries by British Commonwealth forces, at the time held by the Vichy French. 18th of June 1941 still saw plenty of fierce resistance from Vichy units on the ground and in the air. At 9:52, 7 Dewoitine D-520s of Groupe de Chasse 36 took off to escort a single Potez 6311 on a reconnaissance mission in the Kounitra, Sheikh Meskin, Kisweh area. The flight was originally led by Capitaine Rival Mézère, but his aircraft developed engine problems and he had to return to base. Command was then taken over by the French ace, Sous-Lieutenant Pierre Legloan, one of the most successful French fighter pilots of the war. This change, however, seems to have caused some confusion, and the formation was circling the area while Legloan investigated some vehicles. The French formation was flying at an altitude of 8,000 feet. In the same area, but at a higher altitude, there was the flight of RAF Cluster Gladiators from X-Flight, based in Transjordan. By mid-1941, this British biplane was outdated by all standards, but a few were still active in secondary theaters. In fact, 3 days earlier, the Gladiators had met these same Dewoitines and claimed 2 of them shot down while losing one of their own. On that occasion, the French pilots had bounced the British. This time it was the other way around. Lieutenant Boiry was the first victim, and his Dewoitine went down in flames. The other French pilots took notice, and one of them, Sergeant Pimon, attempted to turn with the Gladiators. This was the wrong tactic in a monoplane versus biplane fight, and Pimon was hit, eventually crash landing his Dewoitine and being captured. The 3 remaining Dewoitines engaged in a dogfight with the Gladiators that lasted about 15 minutes. Even though the French pilots were careful not to repeat Pimon's mistake and avoided trying to outturn the Gladiators, they were nevertheless unable to hit any of them. Sous-Lieutenant Legloan apparently stayed away from the fight, possibly because 3 days earlier his Dewoitine had been damaged by Gladiators, and was eventually written off after a crash landing at Rayak. One victory was credited to Flying Officer Young, while the other credit unfortunately remains unknown. This was not the last aerial victory for the Gladiator. That distinction goes to the Finns, who achieved this feat as late as February 1943. This was, however, the final air battle for the venerable biplane in RAF service. Achieving a 2-0 victory against a much more modern fighter is a remarkable way to end a career. Vichy bombers remained heavily involved in attacks against Commonwealth ground forces, while some of their air units were being reorganized and moved to other air bases. 10 more Martin 167 bombers of GR-122 were allocated to the Syrian campaign, and 5 Dewoitines arrived to boost the ranks of Groupe de Chasse 36. The British side, meanwhile, was only just beginning to receive reinforcements, as the offensive operation in North Africa, known as Operation Battle Axe, stalled and was abandoned. This led to a reallocation of resources, primarily in the form of 4 Wellington squadrons in the Suez Canal zone, which were tasked with bombing Aleppo and Beirut. Apart from the bombers, several fighter squadrons were to be transferred to Palestine. 19th of June 1941 was a relatively quiet day for air operations. The only noteworthy action took place in the Sidon area. Having escorted some Blenheims, 7 Tomahawks of No. 3 Squadron RAAF were directed towards the Lebanese port, where they encountered 10 Martin 167s of the French Navy attacking Australian ground troops. Four of the French bombers were damaged by the Australian pilots, one of them rather seriously. Fortunately for the bomber crews, the Tomahawks were low on fuel and had to turn back before being able to shoot any Martins down. This was another episode of our series covering the air war in the Syria and Lebanon campaign of 1941. Your opinion of the series is appreciated, and as always, keep watching Showtime 112.